Hello everyone, I'm Anas Al-Ubaidi, and this is lecture 42 or session 42 within chapter 24 of the Advanced Medical Science Liaison and Medical Monitor Certification course program by CCRPS. The chapter is about conceptual and theoretical monitoring, while the topic for the session is about monitoring of drug process and drug procedure interaction trials. Introduction. We'll start with the definition as drug process and drug procedure interaction trials evaluate how pharmaceutical interventions are influenced by various clinical processes or processes and procedural methodologies. These trials ensure that patient safety and drug efficacy are optimized when integrated into medical procedures. Key points. We'll start with the drug process interaction. The definition, particularly for the drug process interaction, as a drug process interaction trial evaluates the interactions between drugs and clinical workflows, including drug preparation, timing of administration, and patient-specific factors like comorbidities or concurrent therapies. The key focus areas here for drug process interaction trials: timing of administration. Timing is a critical factor in ensuring optimal drug efficacy. Medications administered too early or too late can compromise their intended effects, especially in time-sensitive scenarios like surgery. Example, antibiotic prophylaxis with cefazolin must be administered within 60 minutes prior to surgical incision to ensure sufficient tissue concentrations during the procedure. Delayed administration increases the risk of surgical site infections despite adequate dosing. And this is just an example on timing of administration. Preparation protocols, improper preparation methods such as incorrect mixing or reconstitution can alter the pharmacodynamic (PD) and pharmacokinetic (PK) profiles of drugs. Example, reconstitution of powdered drugs like daptomycin must adhere to strict guidelines to maintain stability and potency. Deviations can lead to degraded therapeutic effects and potential toxicity. Workflow integration, integrating drugs into clinical processes such as automated dispensing or bedside administration, requires careful coordination to minimize errors, bias, and delays. Example, barcode scanning technologies are increasingly utilized in inpatient care settings to confirm correct dosing, reduce medication administration errors, and ensure accurate timing. Now, the drug procedure interaction. As for drug procedure interaction trial, the definition here examines how drugs interact with physiological challenges and the procedural conditions of medical or surgical interventions. Now, the key focus areas for drug procedure interaction trials: hemodynamic changes. Certain procedures, such as cardiac catheterization or surgeries involving fluid management, can induce dramatic physiological changes like blood pressure fluctuations. Drugs may require real-time dosage adjustments to ensure safe and effective use. Example, vasodilators like nitroglycerin must be carefully dosed during cardiac catheterization to avoid excessive drops in blood pressure, which can lead to ischemic complications. Anesthetic and neuromuscular interactions. Drugs used during procedures involving anesthesia must align with procedural demands to optimize patient outcomes while minimizing risks. Example, neuromuscular blocking agents like ricuronium require precise administration during endotracheal intubation under general anesthesia to ensure adequate muscle relaxation and patient safety. Patient positioning and procedural modifications. The positioning of patients or procedural adjustments may influence how drugs affect target sites or circulate throughout the body. Example, intrathecal injections for spinal anesthesia require precise positioning to ensure correct drug dispersion and minimize adverse effects such as hypotension. Monitoring strategies. Before we proceed in the strategies, we have here a summarized diagram on enhancing patient safety in drug administration. As here we have process interaction monitoring and we have procedure interaction monitoring. Now, for process interaction monitoring, develop standardized protocols for drug preparation, administration, and integration into clinical workflows. Utilize real-time documentation systems to track the deviations and maintain accountability. Example, barcode-enabled medication administration systems, BCMA for short, ensure correct dosing and timing across multiple points of care during chemotherapy delivery. Procedure interaction monitoring, employ intensive monitoring systems such as continuous cardiac output measurement tools during high-risk procedures involving hemodynamically active drugs. Use biomarkers to evaluate the drug's interaction with procedural environments such as bleeding risks during anticoagulant therapy. Example, serum potassium levels are monitored during surgeries involving high dose diuretics like furosemide. And this is just an example on procedure interaction monitoring. Trial design considerations, endpoint prioritization, process interaction trials often focus on pharmacokinetic PK endpoints such as drug absorption and metabolism under clinical workflow constraints. Procedure interaction trials emphasize pharmacodynamic PD endpoints such as therapeutic efficacy and safety during procedural challenges. Example PK pharmacokinetic endpoints are prioritized when evaluating IV, intravenous antibiotic administration, pre-orthopedic surgery, while PD pharmacodynamic endpoints take precedence in anticoagulant trials during cardiovascular surgical procedures. Randomization and blinding and randomization are essential to reduce potential biases and ensure accuracy when comparing drugs across diverse workflows or procedures. Example, a blinded trial evaluated sedative effects during endoscopic procedures to minimize observer bias and focus on the clinical effects. Here's a summarized diagram on summarizing how to prioritize endpoints and design the trial. On the left, we have prioritized PK endpoints, then here implement randomization. On the right, prioritize PD endpoints, implement blind. Next, we have challenges in monitoring. Process-related challenges, variations in workflow practices between institutions can impact drug administration outcomes. Example, differences in infusion pump calibration standards across hospitals can lead to dosage discrepancies for chemotherapy drugs like cisplatin. Procedure-related challenges, acute physiological changes such as fluid shifts during major surgeries, can alter drug pharmacokinetics (PK) and pharmacodynamics (PD). Example, trauma patients taking anticoagulants face increased bleeding risks during emergency surgeries, necessitating rapid reversal protocols. And here's a summarized diagram summarizing the challenges in drug administration monitoring. As here we have process variations, and here we have procedure variations, inconsistent drug administration outcomes. Safety and ethical oversight, process consideration, adherence to standard operating or operational procedures, SOPs for short, which is standard operating procedures, minimizes medication errors and ensures consistency. Example, assigning dedicated pharmacists to oncology settings prevents incorrect chemotherapy formulations. Procedure considerations, obtaining informed patient consent regarding drug procedure risks is essential. Example, patients undergoing invasive surgeries are educated about the risks of continuing anti-thrombotic therapy during the procedure. Here's a diagram summarizing the safety of medical processes. As on the left, we have informed patient consent, on the right, adherence to SOPs as of standard operating procedures. Tools for monitoring. Process monitoring tools. We have clinical decision support systems, for short CDSS, minimize errors by providing automated alerts for contraindicated drugs or incorrect workflows. Example, the clinical decision support system, CDSS, flagged an interaction between anticoagulants and nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, for short, in a multi-drug treatment plan during hospitalization. Procedure monitoring tools. Advanced physiological monitoring devices track patient responses to drug administration during procedures. Example, continuous cardiac output monitoring during open heart surgeries evaluates the effects of beta blockers on myocardial performance. Here's a summarized diagram on monitoring tools in healthcare. On the right, procedure monitoring, on the left, process monitoring. Real-world applications, drug process interaction example, handling protocols where assist for insulin stability in outpatient diabetes care workflows, ensuring no loss of potency before patient administration. Drug procedure interaction example, renal perfusion was monitored during diagnostic imaging procedures involving contrast agents in patients with compromised kidney or renal function. Here's a summarized diagram on comparing drug interaction protocols. On the left, focus on the drug stability, drug process interaction. On the right, emphasis on emphasize on patient monitoring, drug procedure interaction. Summary tables. Next, we have tables to summarize what we have covered through this lecture. As table on drug process examples, process aspect, drug impact, key actions, example outcome. Process aspects, we have timing of administration, preparation procedures, pharmaceutical handling, infusion rate control, and dose standardization. Table on drug procedure examples, procedure aspect, drug impact, key measures, example outcomes. Procedure aspects, we have hemodynamic stability, anesthesia optimization, electrolyte balance, contrast agent administration, bleeding control. Stable on monitoring strategies, strategy area of focus, technique, benefit, example outcomes. Strategies, we have barcode scanning, biomarker analysis, standardized workflows, electrolyte monitoring, real-time compliance alerts. Table on challenges, types, specific issue, example, solution proposed, final outcome. Types, we have workflow variability, device calibration errors, ethical documentation gaps, compliance failures, and acute physiological responses. Table on tools as of tool technique, primary function, key feature, advantage, example, implementation, tools of technologies. We have clinical decision support systems, CDSS, as short for clinical decision support systems. Continuous cardiac monitoring devices, centralized data platforms, real-time imaging tools, MRI/PET, automation and monitoring devices. Application table, scenario, key principle applied, key actions, timeline, what to watch out for. Scenarios, we have timing, successful lean administration before surgical incision, managing daptomycin reconstitution stability during hospital preparation, monitoring hypotension impact during nitroglycerin using cardiac catheterizations, optimizing recuronium dosing during endotracheal intubations, evaluating barcode scanning integration and inpatient treatments for error-proof dosing, assessing biomarkers and furosemide used to monitor serum potassium during patient procedures, monitoring IV, antibiotic pharmacokinetics during orthopedic surgery preparation, calibrating infusion pumps consistently across chemotherapy sites, addressing bleeding complications from anticoagulants in trauma surgeries, using clinical decision support system CDSS to flag potential high-risk drug interactions, monitoring renal perfusion, kidney perfusion impact of diagnostic imaging contrast agents in compromised patients, validating real-time cardiac output, monitoring tools during beta blocker use in heart surgery, optimizing oncology workflows with dedicated pharmacist-based checks for chemotherapy, assessing long-term stability of insulin refrigeration in outpatient clinics. Next, we will revise what we have covered through this lecture through some MCQs or multiple choice questions. Question 1. What is the primary difference between drug process and drug procedure interaction trials? A, drug process focuses on surgical techniques, while drug procedure focuses on the workflow timing. B, drug process evaluates clinical workflows influence on drugs, while drug procedure examines interactions with medical procedures. C, drug process focuses on device compatibility, while drug procedure handles drug mix stability. Or D, drug process is unrelated to pharmacokinetics, while drug procedure doesn't consider pharmacodynamics. So definitely the answer is B. as of drug process evaluates clinical workflows influence on drugs, while drug procedure examines interactions with medical procedures. As drug process trials assess how workflows like administration timing or preparation influence drug efficacy, whereas drug procedure trials evaluate the interaction of drugs with the procedures like surgeries or diagnostics. Question 2. Why is timing a critical factor in drug process interaction? And timing is a critical factor in any trial, not only in drug process interaction trials. Is it A, to evaluate physical compatibility of drugs with medical devices, B, to ensure surgical staff availability during trial main points, C, to achieve maximum efficacy as seen with the pre-surgical administration of civazoline, or D, to minimize the environmental influence on the drug purity? So definitely the answer is C. Why timing is a critical factor? To achieve maximum efficacy, as seen as, for example, pre-surgical administration of civazoline, which is an example, came through the lecture. As administering civazoline within 60 minutes before surgery exemplifies the importance of timing in optimizing drug efficacy and preventing complications like surgical site infections. Question 3. What is a key monitoring strategy for drug procedure interactions? A. Barcode verification during inpatient treatment. B. Intensive hemodynamic monitoring during surgeries involving high-risk drugs. C. Cross-validation of diluted samples in centralized labs. D. Reconstitution of powdered drugs to enhance stability. So the answer would be B. Intensive hemodynamic monitoring during surgeries involving high-risk drugs, as hemodynamic monitoring ensures drugs like vasodilators are safely administered during high-risk procedures such as cardiac catheterization, avoiding complications like sudden blood pressure drops. Question 4. What challenge is often associated with drug process interaction trials? Is it A, managing workflow variations across healthcare settings, B, controlling pharmacodynamic impacts during surgeries, C, blinding participants during randomized trials, or D, optimizing patient positioning for drug impact evaluations? So definitely here the challenge would be uh, is often associated with drug process interaction trials would be managing workflow variations across healthcare systems. Answer is A, as variability in workflows such as differences in infusion pump calibration across hospitals can impact how drugs like cisplatin are administered and monitored for efficacy. Question 5. Which tool is pivotal for reducing errors in drug process interaction trials? Is it A, hemodynamic monitors, B, clinical decision support systems, CDSS, C, bioassay tools for cell level evaluation, or D, imaging technologies like MRI and PET scans? So the answer here is B, as a tool that is pivotal for reducing errors and bias in drug process interaction trials, which is the CDSS, which is the clinical decision support systems. CDSS helps mitigate errors by ensuring workflow compliance, such as flagging contraindicated prescriptions, thereby safeguarding proper drug process interactions. And here we come to the end of this lecture. Thank you very much and goodbye.